generally to say what is tundra, tundra means, tundra is actually, it has been given from, it's a Russian word which generally talks about like the meaning of the word tundra means it's a kind of barren land where we can have scanty vegetation. We cannot expect much vegetation. So barren land. So barren land can be literally transformed into tundras. So tundra is a type of ecosystem and it's a type of vegetation also for us. Okay. So if we talk from the tundra point of view, so tundras usually where they would be at the polar region. So beyond 70 degrees latitudes. So we will have tundras. Okay. So if we talk from tundra's perspective, basic characteristics are like will be like this. So first thing, so look carefully here. In tundras, there will be harsh climatic conditions. Climatic conditions would be very harsh. When we are saying harsh, that means it would be extreme. So extreme in the sense, extreme cold and extreme coldy winds would be there. So that is one thing. So climate would be likewise. And if you look from the seasonal variations, so winters, if you talk from the perspective of winters, winters would be very long and severe because most of the time the polar region, it would be under, it would be without sunlight. So that portion, it would be, we will have winters would be very long and winters would be very severe because they would be very cold. And summers are cool and summers would be brief. Brief in the sense, very short duration. For very short duration, we can expect the summers and it would be cool. Usually summers has to be hot. So from our perspective, but here summers also would be cool. But thing is that temperatures slightly they will rise. That's how. So that's how one thing would be. So you have to remember such statements. Like for example, they will give a statement stating that like consider the following, and they will give like this is a particular ecosystem where winters would be long and summers would be brief, and winters are, they will give that kind of things, and they will ask identify the ecosystem from the options given below. So likewise, they may be question, they may give the question. So for that, you need to have. Okay, first thing is with respect to climatic conditions, temperature and seasons. Second thing, what about the precipitation? Precipitation. So if we talk from precipitation point of view, precipitation here, it would be very scanty. That means very limited, very low precipitation would be there. And coupled with this, precipitation would be mainly in the form of snow. Mainly in the form of snow means snowfall would be there. So rainfall, we can expect very less rainfall and we can expect more snowfall. So snowfall, that is one. And then next characteristic, next abiotic factor, if you see, what about the nature of the soil? So nature of the soil, if we talk from the soil nature, soil is usually, it would be in the form of permafrost. Permafrost. So the name itself, it talks about the soil would be permanently covered up with frost. That means ice. Okay. So permafrost. Perma means permanently covered with a layer of ice. So we will call it as permafrost. And that's how throughout the year soil would remain frozen and we can have a layer of ice over the soil. So that is one thing. So that would be the nature of soil. And then if you talk from the perspective of biodiversity, biodiversity means the variety of living organisms that are living in a particular region is known as biodiversity. So as the climatic conditions are extreme, climatic conditions are very harsh, so it won't allow diverse animals to live. Okay, one thing. And other thing, the soil and rainfall, these conditions are not favorable for growth of the vegetation, like if we talk from plants. So this is also not favorable. So due to non-availability of the favorable factors, here also we can have biodiversity would be very low. So it can be plants or it can be animals. So that would be important characteristics of tundras. Okay. And as we were discussing, there are two types of tundras. One is Arctic tundra and other one is we will have alpine tundra. Okay. So what are Arctic tundras and where they would be? So this is one important thing that we have to discuss. So characteristics and other important things. So in each thing we have to discuss about basic things like distribution. So examples, and flora and fauna. So these things would be picked directly and asked. So you have to have basic knowledge about these things and try to learn at least these things which I am providing to you. Okay, so rest things at least you can just eliminate, or you can begin to learn everything. So something would be better than nothing. So let's try to have that thing. So if you look from the point of Arctic tundras, so Arctic tundra means the name itself, it is indicating that the tundras which are present near the frigid zones. That means beyond 70 degrees north and north latitudes. So if we talk from that, so what is the distribution where Arctic tundras are usually distributed means they are usually extended as continuous belt below polar ice cap and above the line in the northern hemisphere. That means if you see polar region, below to polar region, we can expect the Arctic tundras. That means like from, if you talk from high latitude, in between 90 degrees north to 70 degrees north. So in this region, we can have the Arctic tundras. But tree line. Tree line means like temperate forests. We will talk about temperate forests. We will have temperate forests. So, and taigas, we will have coniferous forests. So, coniferous forests would be considered as the tree line here. Okay, tree line in the northern hemisphere. So, there we can have at the highest level, we can have trees like this. Tropical forests, temperate forests, and coniferous forests, taigas. So, taigas we can have trees. So, likewise, it is extended in between northern polar region to taiga region, like this. So, that is one. And other important thing that you have to keep in mind is that does tundra extends to southern hemisphere or not? So, you also have to have the clarity. So, if we talk from the southern hemisphere point of view, only very small or very some parts of the southern hemisphere will have tundras. That means like extending to very small regions like Falkland Islands. Are you aware of Falkland Islands? So where they are? Yes, at the tip of South America, you will have Falkland Islands. So at the Falkland Islands and in very some parts of Antarctica, we can have the tundras. So this is the extent wise we can have. So that's how they would be generally distributed. Okay. So if we see about some of the important things, examples for it. Okay, I hope this would be visible to you. So if you see from the perspective of the tundras, where we can see, usually we can see the tundras in the higher latitudes. So usually where we can see the locations means now you locate these regions. So roughly this is beyond 70 degrees latitude. So can you see Alaska region here? Okay, can you see Canada region here? And then can you see Greenland here? Can you see Iceland here? So then can you see the Scandinavian plateau? So this plateau is known as Scandinavian plateau, and you will have like Europe and Russia. So this portion, the top regions are like high latitude regions. We will have the taiga, we will have the tundras. So usually in these regions, it would be distributed. If you look from southern hemisphere point of view, so very small portions of Antarctica and a slight portion of Falkland Islands. So this small islands which are located here, they are known as Falkland Islands. So in this region, we can have tundras. Okay, so this is the distribution of tundras, Arctic tundras in particular. Okay, so then if we talk from the flora and fauna point of view, so this is how. So you can remember from the map. So do not try to by heart, remember from the map. So try to locate things like this is the same region, Alaska, then can you remember Canada, then can you remember like Greenland, Iceland, Scandinavia, then Russia. So likewise, you remember from the map perspective and do not by heart such things. And where we have to by heart, we have to by heart. Like for example, these things, you see flora. So while studying about the ecosystem, ecological succession, we were trying to understand about the pioneer species. So there we said like wherever there is no life, but still there we can expect some species to grow. So those species are known as mosses and lichens. So they are the pioneer species. So we can expect presence of such pioneer species. So mosses and lichens. Okay. Then you will have some other small vegetation types like sedges, cotton grass, small things, cotton grass, like willows, beeches. So such vegetation, such plants can be seen in tundra region. So that is one. And then if you see flora, fauna, so what kind of fauna can be seen there means Arctic foxes, polar bears, caribous, or musk ox. So try to go through this factual data, but try to keep some mnemonics or some way to remember that. So they might be asked in the exam. Okay. So that is one thing. If you are not familiar of anything, just look at the image so that you can remember about them. So for example, caribou. If you are not aware of caribou, just Google it so you can remember from images like this. So this is with respect to Arctic tundras. So then there are other things called alpine tundras. So usually Arctic tundras, they are located at high latitudes. Latitudes, we are using the word latitudes. So beyond 70° north latitude or 70° south latitude. So we can have the Arctic tundras. But what about alpine tundra? So look at this statement, like they would be usually found at any latitude in a high altitude area, So usually, if you talk from the perspective of heat or insulation, when you go, as you go height, then what about the temperature? Will it increase or will it decrease? Yes. Good. So temperature decreases when we go with height. So we will call that process as lapse rate. So when we go for every 1 kilometer rise in height, there would be a drop of 6.5 degree. Good. So 6.5 degrees centigrade or Celsius loss of temperature would be there. So as and when you go high, keep on going high, temperature goes on dropping. If you go 1 kilometer high, 6.5 degrees will be lost. Then if you go to 2 kilometers high, then 13 degrees centigrade Celsius will be lost. If you go beyond like 3 kilometers, then we will have likewise, it will be lost. So due to this, when you go to the top heights, like now you think about Himalayas, what's the highest peak, highest peak of Himalayas? Yes, 8848. 8848, what is it? Is it meters or kilometers? Meters. So 8848 means roughly it is 8.8 kilometers. So now you see, like at the top of Himalayas, Mount Everest is the highest peak at the top. Like when you go, like now for example at the ground level, you have, let's say, 30 degrees centigrade. Now you minus when you go to like if you go to top of, like let's say 6 kilometers or 7 or 8 kilometers, can you expect the loss of temperature? So likewise, there also climate drops, harsh climates would be established, so temperature would be lost. Like all those conditions or characteristics of tundras would be replicated again, and thus we will have alpine tundras at any latitudes, but at high altitude areas. Okay? Yes, rate of decrease in temperature is very standard. So it's called as lapse rate, normal lapse rate. Okay, so we can have it. It's a standard thing that has been given by various scholars. So but anyhow, normal height with rise in height. Like you think about, for example, this is the height. So for example, this from ground level to this level, if you are rising, so this would be 1 meter high, let's say, for example. So likewise, if you go high like this, okay, so that is something. So now that's how the alpine tundras would be generally distributed. So where they can be seen? They can be seen in the mountainous regions. So you can see now Himalayas, the Alps, the Tibetan Plateau, the Caucasus Mountains, the American Cordilleras. So all are nothing but the mountains. So wherever the high areas are there, like high altitude areas are there, there we can expect the presence of alpine tundra. Okay, so that is one thing. So there also what kind of flora and fauna would be there. So flora and fauna would be normal, like we can have mosses, sedges, liverworts or grassy vegetation. So all these things would be there. So just to go through the flora and fauna. Okay, so that is one thing. So this is basically with respect to Arctic and alpine tundra. So if this statement says like that, tundras are only extended to the high latitudes and we cannot expect the tundras at the low latitudes. Is this statement true or false? Yes, we also have to consider alpine tundra also. So tundras not only extend to high latitudes, but they also can be present at the low latitude areas also, because we have alpine tundra. Okay, so can you able to catch that thing? So we have to have such things. If the question says like this, Arctic tundras extends only to high latitudes and we cannot see Arctic tundras in the low latitudes. What about this? True, because we are talking directly about Arctic tundras. If it is generalized statement, so then we also have to consider alpine tundras. Can you able to understand that? So such kind of things we have to keep in mind. And tundras can be extended. Tundras can be present in the southern hemisphere also. Is this statement true? Good. So if the statement says like this, tundras extends only to northern hemisphere. What about this statement? False. Obviously, it is false because we can have that in the southern hemisphere also. So be clear with such kind of statements. So for that, you will have to have the knowledge. So that is one thing with respect to the tundras.